Today we're going to replace the charging port on a Galaxy Note i717. This is a modular component, so relatively easy difficulty. As you can see here, hopefully without too much glare, that the device is not charging. So we're going to go ahead and unplug this, power it off, and if you flip the phone over, or the phablet if you will, you'll see over here across from the camera flash there's a place where you can pry the back panel off, remove your battery, SIM card, and of course if you have a micro SD, make sure you remove that beforehand just to be safe. On the rear panel of the device we will have a total of 9 Phillips head screws that we're going to remove. These are quite sticky sometimes, so you may have to use a pair of tweezers. Also don't forget your S Pen, take that out as well. And some of these screws just don't like to come out. They're very stubborn. You might have to use a pair of tweezers to assist them in removal. Otherwise, if you're certain that they're backed out all the way, you can also place a piece of Scotch tape over the top just to make sure they don't get lost in the process of the repair. But I do recommend you remove them if possible. And once you get all of those out, you're going to want to take a very small pry tool. This is one of the few instances where these come in handy. And what you're going to do is go between the bezel and the actual glass on the front. So the seam here is just actually kind of under the glass. You don't need to go very deep here. Just work your way around gradually and be very careful around the charge. Well, in this case, we're not too worried about the charging port, but under any other circumstances, we want to make sure that we don't go in too deep and snag anything on the inside of the phone. And once you've worked your way all the way around the perimeter, you should be able to remove the rear panel. And on the inside, we're going to have 3 screws here down on the bottom, which will remove this assembly that covers up the charging port. So these will need to come out. Once again, they are a little resistant to removal, so I actually ended up leaving these bottom 2 in. Just make sure you don't get them mixed up with the other screws and that you do not misplace them. You're going to want to make sure that you have all of these when we put everything back together. So after you've loosened those, you can actually lift this little piece off of the bottom, and that will expose the charging port. And you'll see that it will be necessary to remove the logic board. So we're going to have a total of, I believe, 6 pop connectors here and also an antenna connector that we need to disconnect in order to remove the logic board, in addition to 2 screws that actually go through the PCB into the midframe. So once you've disconnected all of your pop connectors, you'll have a screw here and one up at the top just next to the camera. And these are black in color and definitely not interchangeable with the other screws, so make sure you don't get these mixed up. And once you get those 2 out and you're sure that everything's unplugged, you should be able to remove the logic board. You will want to unplug this antenna wire probably at the bottom at some point. You can do it before or after, it doesn't really matter, but that is going to have to come off because it actually plugs into the charging port flex cable. So right down here, I'm just going to go ahead and take this out completely for now. You may have to apply some heat. This one came out pretty easily. There is some adhesive underneath the bottom. And also, we do want to make sure that you have the correct revision. There are 2 different flex cables. My understanding is that they are backward compatible if you get revision 2. But as you can see, these are both revision 1 flex cables. So I'd recommend, just to be safe, you do order the same one that is already installed into your device. That way you make sure there's no problems. You can peel this backing off here and it will expose the adhesive underside. That will help keep this thing secured on the inside. And once we put that in, we can go ahead and reattach that antenna wire. I like to do things in as close to reverse order as possible. There's a channel that goes down the side on the outside of the battery compartment here where that antenna wire is going to route. So when you get ready to put the logic board in, it's kind of intuitive to just kind of set that inside, but you want to make sure that you actually get this wire underneath the logic board, and you don't want to pinch it. You can damage these very, very easily, and you have to get the exact same wire in order to replace it. So you'll see that kind of runs down that channel, and once we have that in the right position, we can just set the board in here. and I recommend that you do secure it with the 2 screws. As long as you're certain that you haven't pinched any cables, make sure that everything has a place to plug in and that there's nothing missing any pop connectors. You don't want to bury those and tighten the screws down. You can actually damage them if you do so. So once you've got those 2 screws in, you go ahead and plug in the pop connectors, all of your flex cables, and your antenna wire. And I usually save that one for last because it can be a little tricky. It seems that these are not the exact length that they need to be, so sometimes you have to take a soft pry tool or a pair of tweezers and just kind of position this thing right over the area that it's going to snap in and very carefully connect it. You don't want to use too much force on those. If you have to force it, you can actually damage the connection. And once we've got that attached, we can go ahead and reinstall this bottom piece for the cover that goes over the charging port. And you'll see I've got these 2 screws that kind of stayed behind, so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten those up. And I want to double check, make sure you're not pitching any wires under there. Again, that can be a real bad thing if you damage the antenna wire, because you'll have to find a donor or buy a replacement part somewhere online. And once we've got these screws tightened down and everything is connected, the rest is pretty much downhill from here. You can snap the back panel back on, and I would recommend you work your way around the perimeter and be certain that everything snaps into place and you have a nice level edge all the way around the outside. Although it will appear as if the glass kind of sits on top of the bezel. That is the design on the first generation Note. Once we've done that, before I put my external screws in, I'm going to insert the battery, plug the charger in, and make sure that the phone is actually charging. And you will see here shortly the battery icon appears on the screen. And once that disappears, I like to hit the power button 1 time just so you can see the progress meter that actually shows that the battery is charging. Put your screws back in the back and you're good. If you found the video helpful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter or Facebook. Post your questions in the comment section below or visit gocellphonerepair.com/forum. Thanks for watching.